I had this, I remember like kind of thinking through, I was drinking and I was doing drugs and I was thinking about like what would be a way to die that would make an impact. How can I do it? Like, what would be the way to do it? Anyway, I passed out. I did not jump out the window. And I woke up 16 hours later. I'd slept through work.
Hmm.
And that was the last time I drank or did drugs.
Welcome to the Zero Quit Podcast, where I bring you candid conversations with elite athletes, entrepreneurs, specialists, and other creatives. I'm your host, Covington, and through these dialogues, you will hear powerful stories and practical advice that will help you live a more active and intentional life. If you enjoy the show, be sure to subscribe and share it with a friend. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to today's podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Michael Chernow. He's a restaurateur, serial entrepreneur, and athlete based in New York City. In addition to managing his various businesses, he's also a husband and father of two. How you doing, Mike?
I'm so well, man. I'm
My
so well.
question, my question with all that you do with food, which we'll get into later, is are you the cook at your house or is your wife cook at all?
Well, I think that's a great question. My wife is an unbelievable cook. Like,
Yeah.
truly, she's a. My kids are so lucky because they've
I was gonna say
got
they're all eating good.
they've got an amazing cook as a mom, and Donna, my wife, cooks pretty much Monday through Thursday, Friday,
Mm-hmm.
because I get home like right before dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I am pretty much in charge of cooking on the weekends. I
Okay.
mean, look, I love to cook. I love to cook, but I just don't have the time to do it during the week because of work.
Yeah.
She's like the master chef during the week, and then on the weekends, I give it my best.
Yeah, it's hard. I feel like I just try to stick with what I'm good at, which for me is just okay, handling my breakfast, making, meal prepping some rice, things like that, and helping out where I can. But cooking's one of those things where I find it very fascinating, where it can be like an extreme art form. Because I have a friend of mine that used to spend like 3 hours prepping the simplest meal, and I would ask him, like, what you're wasting a ton of time. But he find passionate, as I'm sure you do, similar to how I find a lot of passion in taking the time of brewing specialty coffee and brewing at home rather than popping in a Keurig. So it's just one of those passions and art forms. But yeah, I was curious with all that you do. But I think a good way to kick this off would be to ask you how it is growing up in New York, because I believe you're still in New York City, New York native, and I always find it kind of curious. What is that upbringing like in a very kind of urban, big city, hectic environment?
Yeah. So I'm actually no longer in New York City. I moved out
Okay.
of New York City to upstate New York, or maybe, upstate New Yorkers might get offended by that. Mid-state New York. So I'm not like Syracuse, Rochester. I'm in the Hudson Valley, about 2.5 hours north of New York City. But I
Gotcha.
grew up in Manhattan and spent the better part of my adult life in Brooklyn. Growing up in New York City was amazing. I have two sons now. Finley is 8, and Dakota will be 6 in a couple weeks here. And we moved to our upstate house in the beginning of the pandemic. I always thought that I was going to raise my kids in the city, and the reason why is because I am the person I am today because of my upbringing in New York
Mm-hmm.
City. There was a lot of adversity for me growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I was exposed to a lot of bad news, but similarly, I learned an enormous amount, and my emotional intelligence and my ability to connect with human beings and read a room and
Yeah.
my work ethic, my hustle, I believe, because it certainly didn't come from my parents,
Mm-hmm.
is a direct result of my upbringing in New York City. So it's it's a cool place because it's the epicenter of culture for the United
Yeah.
States and arguably the world, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can eat the best cuisine from every nook and cranny on the planet in New York City. Uh, you know, Culture really does stand out in New York, and there are many not only states around the country but also countries around the world that want to emulate what happens in New York. And
Yeah.
so I grew up in that. I grew up in the heart of it. and it made me the guy I am today. So
Yeah, I wonder what your thought is too with raising two sons. Like, how do you balance the, okay, I don't want to be a helicopter parent. Maybe I have them in a nicer suburb, but at the same time, I want them to be exposed to the different cultures and perspectives, like you mentioned, that you get in New York. You know, we know a lot of the same guys, obviously, with the 10,000 teams all in New York City, right? And I look at that city sometimes and I'm like, man, like, I get being at the center of everything, but the costs are brutal. The hustle and bustle is like too much for me. But at the same time, there is a lot that you can take away and a lot of growth that can occur from being, immersed that deeply into a city like that.
well, one thing that I'll say is that now that I live in rural New York,
Mm-hmm.
the chances of my family and I ever moving back to any major city are slim to none.
Yeah.
We love um I love upstate life. I love
Yeah.
having a lot of land. I love having a gym in my garage, my cold plunge, my sauna, my barrel sauna,
Mm-hmm.
my ice barrel, my pool. I mean, I built this sort of dream situation
Mm-hmm.
where I live now. And when I have to go down to the city, which is probably twice a month, for once for my podcast where I shoot down there in the studio, and then
Mm-hmm.
I go down typically one other time for meetings. Um, I'm like ready to get out of there ASAP.
No, I relate completely. So I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and I grew up a little bit out of the main city of Richmond. And just it is kind of interesting hearing too. The older I get, the more people I meet after moving out to Colorado. Like just getting the different. It's more than perspective. It's like values, it's way of life of people in, let's say, the New England region versus the South versus Midwest, and you definitely get a different sense of different ways that you can shape your life and cultivate exactly what you're looking for, especially like you're talking about living out where you do have a slower pace of living. You can kind of really craft the exact daily routines, which I know routines and habits are big in your life and they're, critical to mine as well. And so I relate to your perspective of, okay, I can have my gym down here in or downstairs. I can work out there. That's never going to get skipped because it's right there convenient for me. I can manage my businesses from afar at home, fortunately with technology and how you set up your businesses and all that. So I can definitely relate and feel the same way. Like the urge to be in the city is just not there for me, although I understand different people's aspirations with that. With entrepreneurship, was it always something that felt like it was inevitable for you growing up, or was it kind of like the only viable path, just the way that you were hardwired, or was it something you pivoted to later on?
I've thought like an entrepreneur for as early as I can remember. I was selling my toys on the corner of 87th Street and 2nd Avenue at 5. I
Mm-hmm.
was taking the money that I made from dog walking at 10 and 11 and going over to Alex's MVP's card shop and buying packs of cards and comic book grab bags, taking the stuff that I wanted from the decks and then setting up shop outside of the card shop until they kicked me out and
Always
selling the
hustling.
stuff I didn't want. Um, I built a dog walking business in my neighborhood, and by the time I was 12, I was walking like 20 or 30 dogs, and my parents basically had to put a kibosh to it because I'd get home from school and I'd walk dogs from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always had this um, ethic of wanting to make, do, and create.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say that though my relationship with my father was really hard, it was a super tough relationship. He was an entrepreneur as well. Unfortunately, not very successful, but he was always trying to. He was an electrician. He had his own little business. He would do lighting design, electrician work. He was a master electrician, and so I think I kind of got that like you've got to make for yours
Mm-hmm.
mentality from my pops potentially. Um, but being an entrepreneur, as far as I'm concerned, is a blessing and a curse, right? Because you 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 have the ability to really create community, create jobs, create a culture for people to thrive in, but it's
Mm-hmm.
very, very stressful. It is it is
Yeah.
arguably one of the most stressful paths one could take because no matter what, as the captain of the ship, no matter how many people you have on your team, you're responsible. You're accountable.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
never close, yeah.
I always tell people that it's like the good thing is it's all on you. And then the bad thing is it's all on you. So like you're like you mentioned the captain of your ship. You kind of control that destiny. But yeah, if you don't want to work on the weekends, you don't want to work the extra hours, then nothing gets done. And so it is a lot of stress. It's a lot of, like you mentioned, uncertainty as well. You don't have a guaranteed set hours where you go in, you stay there as long as you can, you clock out, you're guaranteed to get your paycheck. If you're not doing the necessary work, if you're not finding the necessary clientele, making the sales, planning the marketing campaigns, taking the next step to scale the business, then you really are just screwing yourself in that instance. And it's funny you reference your father being the catalyst for you being an entrepreneur because mine was a bit, I think, in the same way. I grew up very young. Well, okay, that sounds funny. Tautology there, grew up very young. But I grew up in the same way where I was very much innovative, always creating. And I wanted to be a photographer. Then I wanted to do videography, and be a film director. Then I wanted to do this, do that, start this, and I kind of carried that as I got older as well. And my both my parents kind of always worked in like the corporate world, but I think from what I saw, how the corporate world kind of chews you up and spits you out, I had a kind of confirmation that this isn't what I wanted to do, even more than just looking at corporate life and saying that's not for me. Because I would see my father get laid off in like 08, 09 area. I'd see him kind of get screwed on a promotion or sales just because of corporate politics. And I realized that I wanted to take life in my own hands and have that own control. And again, entrepreneurship is that double edged sword because you do have that control, but then you also have that risk. So, with the businesses that you ended up starting, what was your first baby?
My first baby, my first the first business I launched was the meatball shop. And
Okay.
that was my first, I mean, full transparency,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've got nothing to hide here. Growing up in New York, knowing that I wanted to make money
Mm-hmm.
because it was the only way I was going to get money. Once I became 14, 15 years old, I found out that I could sell weed and eventually other things. And
Mm-hmm.
that was like honestly my first foray into real like understanding business.
Mm-hmm.
And that was obviously not a great way to get exposed to to business, but
You
it,
learn
it,
the
it,
principles.
it's my story, it's my truth,
Yeah.
and so I made a hell of a lot of money when I was young doing that. But I had a real coming to the light moment when I was 23 years old where everything in my life would change from
Mm-hmm.
the life of addiction and that stuff to sobriety and fitness and wellness, and that's when
Mm-hmm.
everything changed. But when I was 29, I opened up the meatball shop in the Lower East Side of New York City, and without a question of a doubt, my first that is what built my platform.
So, where did this passion for food specifically? Because I know you have multiple restaurants and different kind of food ventures overall. Where did this passion for food originate from?
The first legitimate job I was able to get outside of dog walking was at a restaurant. I walked
Mm-hmm.
in there. My friend Daniel Holzman, who was a year older than me, he was working in the delivery department of this vegan restaurant on 76th Street and 3rd Avenue. I was kind of like part time delivering VHS videos for this place called Couch Potato Video after school
Mm-hmm.
on rollerblades. And Daniel said, "Hey man, like we're right up the street. Why don't you come in and see if they want, another delivery boy for the vegan restaurant?" So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Great." And so I rolled up in there literally on my rollerblades, and I said, "Hey, do you guys need another delivery person?" And they hired me, and I once I like got a job in a restaurant, I very quickly was like, "This is where I want to be. Like this feels really good. Um, I probably delivered food for 4 to 6 months. Then they
Was it
brought
the
me.
fast pace of the like service industry that you like too?
I think it was the escape from my apartment where I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
where I was, having a really hard time with my father.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the fact that I was around older people, and I felt like I could really absorb and learn and grow from
Mm-hmm.
these older people that were it was exciting for me.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I like love making people happy. That's
Mm-hmm.
like it's just ingrained in my DNA. Like making others happy, being of service to others is like something that I really just, I guess, inherently enjoy. And
Mm-hmm.
so the world of restaurants, like every time you do something for somebody in a restaurant, they say thank you most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're being of service there over and over and over again if you're doing the right thing. And so they after about 4 or 6 months, something like that, of delivering food, they asked me if I wanted to hop in the kitchen, step in as a dishwasher. I did that, and then
Mm-hmm.
I got to do some prep cooking and then some cooking. And then they asked me if I wanted to go out onto the main dining room floor when I was like 14 or 15, something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then I started my restaurant career. Just like I worked in a bunch of different restaurants in the back of the house and in the front of the house, both at the same time. Predominantly more front of the house work because I really did love being up there with the guests and making them happy.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think my passion for food. I mean, we all love food, right? I
Yeah,
mean, we all love
of
food.
course.
So it was easy for me to really sort of immerse myself into the world of food.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky enough to work in some restaurants that had some of the best food in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I really became infatuated with cooking, with eating, with trying new things, with wine. I be in my before I could actually legally drink, I
Mm-hmm.
became like this wine connoisseur, and I really, really was able to appreciate all sorts of different wines from all
Yeah.
over the world. And then I worked in a restaurant. Eventually, would be the last restaurant I worked in before I opened the meatball shop. I worked there for almost 9 years. Had the greatest wine list in all of New York City, Italian wine list in all of New York City, and I got to manage that list before I got sober. And so I was like really in charge of all these crazy wines. The food at this restaurant was amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so I became totally enamored with food
Yeah.
and beverage because of
Yes.
my experience in the restaurant world.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a little bit of taste of everything from dishwashing, delivery, cooking, serving. So it's like a good yeah, good whole swath of experience in that service industry. So with all the businesses you manage and then also trying to, handle your family, grow a family as you got older, how have you known when to sell, delegate, and manage your businesses differently over the years?
Great question. So when I started at the meatball shop, when we opened the meatball shop, my partner Daniel and I, we opened in February of 2009, coming out of the pit of a recession. We wanted to open up a recession-proof restaurant, the meatball
Mm-hmm.
shop, super inexpensive, vibes were off the chart. I got a real crash course in business.
Mm-hmm.
However, at that age, I didn't understand the difference between working hard and working smart,
Mm-hmm.
working long hours and working smart hours. I just worked. I thought I just needed to be there all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And I was married. I got married in 2007. I opened up the restaurant in 2009, and I didn't take a day off
Yeah.
for over 18 months, and I worked on average 16 to 18 hours a day. And my wife finally said to me, "This is not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen you in almost 2 years. This is impossible. Like I don't know what you expect me to do, but like I can't build a life with you this way." And
Mm-hmm.
I needed to hear that because I just didn't know. I honestly can, say I didn't know what I was doing. I was just
Yeah,
fucking
the
there. I was just
entrepreneur way.
working. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
I
just
get
like
it.
head down, grinding hard because the restaurant took off like crazy and we opened up five more in 2.5 years. And
Hmm.
so it was just really intense, and it was like we were all over the media. I mean, on Good Morning America, the Today Show, we were on, live on Jay Leno, cooking meatballs on Chelsea Handler, and, all sorts of
Hmm.
crazy stuff. I mean, they made a TV show with us, and it was just insanity. And it was overwhelming. It was a lot, and we had a business that we started with 20,000 bucks, the two of us, our life savings, and
Hmm.
quickly became a multi-million dollar business with lots of media, right? So we were
Hmm.
all over the place. And my wife said, this won't last. Like, I love you, but I'm not going to sacrifice my life for your business. And
Hmm.
I was like, you're right. And that was the first time where I really had like,
Moment of
smart smacked
realization.
into me,
Yeah.
and decided that's when we, said, okay, we're going to buy. I said, if I'm in New York City, I am going to be at the restaurant. Like, I know that I have it's almost like an addiction. I'm
Hmm.
an addictive person. I have an addictive personality, and I loved being in the restaurants. And I love my wife, of course, more than anything, and my kids.
Hmm.
But I really also, at that time in my life, I was addicted to work. I was like totally hooked on it, totally addicted. I loved every second of it, even though it was hard as hell, brutal,
Yeah.
but I loved it. And so I said, "You're right, and we need to get out of the city on the weekends because if I'm in the city, I'm going to work. I know it. It's going to be so hard for me not to go. They're going to be calling me. It's going to be hard."
Hmm.
And so we got out. We got a house upstate where we live now, and this is in 2012. And then I said to my business partner, "Hey, man, I can't do this the way I'm doing it anymore. I have to like literally save my marriage. I'm not going to be working on the weekends. I'm leaving on Friday nights and I'm coming back on Sunday night, and that's what I'm doing. And if the restaurant suffers, then I will obviously change my tune, but I don't think it will. I think that we'll be okay and I'll be able to save my marriage and we'll both be able to figure out how to have this balance because there was no
Hmm.
balance before this." And that's what we did. And I really learned how to balance the life of a married human being who wanted to have a family and also work my ass off. And
Yeah.
so the question, I guess, was like, when do you know when to sell? My piece of advice for any entrepreneur listening to this podcast is if you um, if you are if you have an opportunity to mitigate some risk and take some cash out of your business because somebody is interested in potentially purchasing the whole thing or the majority of it,
Hmm.
my advice is, and some people will disagree with me, always take the money. Always.
Yeah.
And the reason why, for me, is because you can hold on tight and think it's going to be worth more and worth more and worth more. And that's great. And you should always have that mentality. However, you never know. Something like a global pandemic can come in and destroy everything before you had a chance to mitigate some risk and take some money out. And that happened. And a lot of my colleagues went belly up. A lot.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I sold equity at Meatball Shop in 2014. I sold equity in Seymour's in 2019, November,
Good call.
right before the pandemic. And that's because, well, there was a couple of, obviously there was more to do with it, right? Like,
Yeah, of course.
Daniel and I didn't see eye to eye on how we wanted to scale the Meatball Shop. We were battling hard, and I said, man, like, this is gonna get ugly. Like, I'll take a back seat. You guys buy some equity for me. I'm comfortable
Hmm.
going to create another business. And it was perfect because at 32 years old, or 32 or 33, you know, I I took out a check that I never in my life ever thought was even possible for me. Never.
Yeah.
No one in my family had money, and I was able to make a decision that literally changed my life. And it is not like I'm like sitting on billions of dollars, But I took out a check that was life changing for me at the time. And
Mhm.
I parlayed it and I put a bunch of money into my new business, Seymour's. I was able to create another business, except this time I knew that I was going to run it for 5 years and try to sell equity to the partners. And I took on a partner about a year in, really smart guy, helped me scale the company to 6 restaurants. And in 2019, I sold that. And,
Mhm.
I began the process. I originally, Creatures of Habit was going to be a restaurant, and I was going to use the restaurant of Creatures of Habit as an incubator for a line of consumer packaged goods because I knew that I didn't want to stamp out restaurants anymore. I'd opened up 14 restaurants over the the last decade before our
Mhm.
Creatures of Habit, and I said, man, like I love creating business, I love creating culture, I love creating community, finding great smart people to surround myself with, but I don't love building restaurant after restaurant after restaurant. So let me figure out
Yeah.
a way to like use my skill set in the world of restaurants to parlay into another business. And so I said I'm going to create this awesome space in Brooklyn, healthy restaurant with a vibe because New York City strangely does not have any like great restaurants that are healthy for people like you and me, but
Yeah.
that you want to hang out in. Most healthy restaurants in New York City like look like healthy restaurants, smell like healthy restaurants, typically like
Give
tapestries
that.
on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody walking out smells like patchouli. So like I wanted to create this healthy restaurant with a vibe and then make products in there, put them on the wall as you walk out for people to potentially purchase if they were interested, seeing what people were grabbing and then invest money into those products and create a CPG brand. And when the pandemic hit, that and I had investors lined up, I had a space, I had the whole thing. When
Mhm.
that when the pandemic hit, that whole entire business model fell face first. There was nothing I could do. I had to pull back. I had to pull out of the deal and tell my investors, I'm sorry. I've got to rethink this.
Yeah.
And they were like, "You're right." Like I was gonna put $500,000 into this business myself, and so I said I've got to rethink this whole project. And we moved out of New York City to our house upstate temporarily. We didn't think it was going to be a full on move. We didn't know, nobody knew what was going on in the world with the pandemic.
Mhm.
And I used it as discovery time, an opportunity for me to like for the first time in 11 years like really take a breath, you know. I had been working on Meatball Shop from 2008, and I'd sold my equity in Seymour's at the end of 2019. So it was 11 years of just like hard balls to the wall, nonstop building. And
Mhm.
I said, I want this. I'm going to give myself 3 to 6 months to figure out what to do. And I said, I'm going to hire an executive coach to work with me on this. So I'm really going to actually do it right. And I'm going to go on runs, on long runs upstate without music, without podcasts, without headphones, and with a little pad in my pocket. And this is how I tend to come up with creative ideas. I'll
Old
go
school
on
pen
these
on
long,
paper.
what?
Old school pen on paper.
Old school pen on paper because I didn't want to have my phone with me.
Yeah, I get that.
Um, and so I had a little pad, go on these runs, and try to come up with ideas. And I've been working with this really amazing coach and very good friend. Her name is Megan Dolce. She owns a company called Ripe. It's a coaching business, and she works with pro athletes and entrepreneurs. And she's just really great at what she does. And she's been a friend of mine for a long time. And she basically convinced me that the restaurant was just a medium for my creative outlet. I'm an entrepreneur that is creative and convincing, and I did not need a restaurant to build my next brand.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, that was like a totally new thought process for me. I was like, wow, like I've been in the restaurant business since I'm 12. Can I just create a business in a totally new industry, new arena? Like I've been playing football forever. Can I just go pick up a golf club and just start swinging the club and be as effective?
Yeah.
And she told me I could. she like gave me the confidence that I really wanted and needed at the time that I knew I had, but I just I've been very repetitious in the world of restaurants. And
Hmm.
so I was on this run and I was thinking about what would be the most authentic to me. I knew that CPG was going to be what I was going to do because eventually Creatures of Habit was going to be a CPG business, after the restaurant. And so I said, what is the most authentic? Like, what can I stand behind 100%? It has to be real. It can't be something that I just come up with. And when I got sober in 2005, excuse me, 2004, I was 23. I had got connected with two guys that took me on as their younger brother. These two
Hmm.
guys were 10 years my senior. They were covered in tattoos. They were sober. They were Muay Thai kickboxing competitors and coaches. And they were sent by God, honestly. Like I don't know how they swooped in so quickly. I know that I reached out to my friend Karen. Karen was dating Marcus. Marcus spoke to Gavin and they both came immediately.
Hmm.
Marcus really sort of sat down with me that first day that I reached out my hand for help and he said, this is what we're going to do and they both kind of tag teamed it and they said we're going to give you a pathway to better. I had overdosed on heroin 2 weeks before this, right? I was
Hmm.
really knocking on death's door. I mean, I was like not the guy I am today. Um, and so I was desperate to change. And they said, there's only one way this is going to work. And I said, what is that one way? And they said, listen to every fucking word we say. And I was like, all right.
Can
I
I
mean,
put a pin in that? So you said so many good things I want to spin off of that I had questions on, but I also was viewing you as kind of like one of those old school wind up car toys where you wind it up and just let it go. And I was like, I just want to let you go. But um, since you bring up sobriety, I want to circle back to that. So have you ever heard of David Foster Wallace or any of his books?
no.
So he's a more modern writer, author. He passed away in '08, but his popular book, his claim to fame, is this book called Infinite Jest. Came out in '96,
What is it?
and Infinite Jest. It's a tank of a book, but it's got a lot of philosophical undertones in it, which is why I was drawn to it. But very satirical, hilarious book. Talks a lot about overconsumption of entertainment specifically. Very critical of society and different elements of it. But specifically, why it relates to you and why I put this quote down that I want to read is because a lot of the themes and characters take place around a recovery house and drug abuse and things like that. And there was a quote that when I knew our episode, our podcast, our chat was coming up, I was like, wow, this quote would be good to just hear your perspective. So let me read it out real quick, and then I have a question to kind of follow up. But he's basically talking about the grip that substance abuse has on, or the character's talking about the grip that substance abuse has on you. So it starts like this: the grinning root white face of your worst nightmares, and the face is your own face in the mirror now. It's you. The substance has devoured or replaced and become you. Then later on, he goes, "You are behind bars. You are in a cage, and you can see only bars in every direction. You are in the kind of hell of a mess that either ends lives or turns them around." And so, my question, as someone who's never been uh, under the grip of substance abuse before, can you describe that kind of grip, that kind of control uh, that substance abuse can have over an individual that had over you? And what was that turning point for you where you said that this was either you were either going to burn in this hell or turn around away from it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to describe that is to talk to you about the last day of my addiction use.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I started using drugs when I was about probably, I would say, maybe I tried smoking marijuana at 12. At least, I mean, I'm positive I did, but I didn't really like start using it until I was
Yeah.
13. And by the end of my 13th year, I was already into harder drugs. By 14, I was completely a reckless kid.
Mm-hmm.
I was like rarely sleeping in my parents' house, either spending all night in Central Park or sleeping at older friends' places. I was going to raves every weekend. I was selling drugs, using drugs, and I was living I thought at that time living the best life.
Mm-hmm.
Those party drugs, went on. I didn't really drink at that age. I was like, it was much easier to get drugs. So it kind of went on until I was about 18 when the drugs really sort of came down to uh, cocaine and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for a while until it became really ugly. And I was up for days, and somebody had introduced me to pills and heroin. And that was sort of the end of the road for me, because it got really bad really fast. And I was 23. I It was July. I got sober August 2nd, so it was probably the third week of July, summer of 2004. It was hot. I had been in someone's apartment for days, um, and I was with a female. Uh, we were doing heroin, and like it's so hard for me to even think about this time, because not because it's like it feels bad, because it just doesn't feel real.
Feels like someone else.
Yeah, someone else, totally
Yeah.
different human, like a story is being written about this person that I'm sort of telling,
Mm-hmm.
like a story, like a book. And so I remember being sitting on a bed naked. There was a mirror on the headboard, and when you're high, if you catch yourself in the mirror, it's totally normal for your face to be like pasty white, like my shirt.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked to the right. I remember catching a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and from my head to my toes, I was white like my shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And it scared the life out of me, literally. I stood up in fear. I fell down and immediately blacked out. And I remember coming in and out of consciousness, and the girl that I was with, I remember telling her to call the ambulance because I was dying, and she refused to call the ambulance. She was screaming, she was crying, she was terrified, she was also very high. She somehow, some way got me over to the bathtub. I got myself into the bathtub, and then she turned me on my back and turned on the cold
Mm-hmm.
water, and just the cold water just running on my body, from the shower head. And I was coming in and out of consciousness, and somehow by the grace of the universe and God, whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't die that day. And so I remember about 3 hours, 4 hours later, leaving that apartment in the evening, and saying to myself, I mean, I was sober because I was terrified, saying to myself, I'll never do this again. This is it. This is it. And I found myself that night, later on that night, getting high again. And so I decided at that point that I was not afraid of death anymore, because I had almost died, and I knew that I was coming to the end, and this was the way I was going to live. I promised myself I was not going to do it again, and I could not stop,
Mm-hmm.
that later on that night. And so I went on a 2 week death march, basically. And it was a Monday. I had been up for 2 days. I was with two friends who are still now actually friends. One of them is sober a long time. One of them is somehow figured it out and is not really doing what he used to do. But they were like, "All right, man, we're going home." And I knew that I had work in about 3 or 4 hours. It was like 6 a.m. on a Monday morning,
Mm-hmm.
August 1st or August 2nd, August 1st, or I think it was August 1st. And we were on the roof of my building. They left, and I walked downstairs, and I still had a bunch of warm beer and some drugs. And I walked into my bedroom. I had like a wall mirror, like a closet mirror,
Mm-hmm.
and I looked at myself in the mirror, and the only thought that I could come up with was, I hate you. I hate you more than anything. You are worthless, useless. You're useless. You should die.
Mm-hmm.
You should just jump out the window. You should die. There's no hope for you. And I had this. I remember like kind of thinking through. I was drinking and I was doing drugs, and I was thinking about like what would be a way to die. that would make an impact. You know, how can I do it? Like, what would be the way to do it? Anyway, I passed out. I did not jump out the window. And I woke up 16 hours later. I'd slept through work.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the last time I drank or did drugs. And my boss fired me. I begged for my job back. My job was the only thing I had tethering me to life, any sort of normalcy. And he said, if you come to the restaurant at 8 o'clock in the morning and you clean the restaurant with the porters, you call me when you get here and you get sober, you can have your job back. But if I find out that you're doing a single drug or drinking a sip of alcohol, or you show up 1 minute after 8 o'clock, you're done. And I was grateful for that. I called up my
Mm-hmm.
friend Karen. She introduced me to Marcus. Marcus came to meet me that night. I went to an AA meeting that day. And, you know,
19 years later.
yeah, 19 years later, I'm here to tell you that I have an amazing, unbelievable, beyond my wildest dreams life.
Yeah.
Straight up. With a woman who I love and whoa, emotions. Didn't think that was gonna happen. And two sons.
Yeah. Can't ask for much more.
Mm,
Well, in the same book, along with again talking about the recovery house and all that, they reference how you have to surrender your will with sobriety. And I liked how you kind of talked about these friends assisted you and told you, hey, you just got to listen to what we say, regardless. And they kind of talk about that in the book. And it's funny I'm getting this perspective out of a fictional book, but it just I guess speaks to the novel more than anything. But it, he points out that a lot of these platitudes and these cliches that you hear one day at a time or these different things we hear brick by brick, right? It could be in fitness or it could be in AA meetings. A lot of them are kind of these like empty phrases that don't really like teach you anything or mean anything. But they do have value. As much as they seem kind of trite and pointless, they do have value. And at some point you just have to kind of surrender your will and whatever ego you have and say, I'm just going to follow what I'm told. I'm going to stick to this. I'm going to, even if I'm an atheist or agnostic, I'm going to submit to this God or this natural force that AA tells me about. Whatever I can do, I'm going to grab at whatever I can grab at to pull myself out of this hole. Is that what a lot of what you experience in AA?
I mean, yes. The I think it's a culmination of a lot of things, right? I think nobody gets sober by force. You know, the
Sure.
truth of the matter is that like you either come to terms with the fact that you have to throw in the towel because it's just not going to work for you anymore, or you die.
Mm-hmm.
That's the two paths for it's like even if you go to jail, even if somebody ties you to a radiator, even if your wife leaves you, your kids hate you, your job, that you had, fires you, like, and you don't want to get sober, you don't get sober. So it's either you change because you come to terms with the fact that like you have to and you're ready, or you die
Mm-hmm.
miserable. And so along with that is a relationship with a power greater than yourself, right? Because like if you think that you're the one in charge
Mm-hmm.
and you play the tape and you're like, well, for the last whatever, for me it was 11 years of active addiction, like I was in charge that whole time. I had no belief in anything else. I didn't ask anybody's permission. I wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
looking for anybody to tell me what to do. Left to my own devices, I was an addict and an alcoholic ready to die, literally. And so I had to like come to terms with the fact that like I don't make the greatest decisions alone. I need a community of people that can help carry me along with my willingness to want to change and a belief in God. And that for me is like I'm not a religious guy. I've got no problem with religion, but I have a
Mm-hmm.
very, very strong relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a God that I have zero idea as to what it is. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a thing. It's just not me. Like it is ego smashing My ego is just not my amigo. And I learned that in AA. And I don't really talk much about AA because, it is an anonymous program.
Of course, yeah.
But the truth is that the sober community is what carried and carries me.
Mm-hmm.
And the fitness community is what keeps me alive. Fitness saved my life. And that's why I'm such a maniac in the world of fitness, because I was introduced to fitness from those two guys very early on. And, I'm not me without it.
Yeah. So essentially, it sounds like, yeah, surrendering your own kind of will and hedonistic way of living and pivoting that towards a greater power, a community, a group, a set of people, a different set of values. One question I had for you was because, and I relate a lot to this, like I said earlier, is this infatuation with habits and routine and structure and rigidity in our lives. I wonder if you feel like people, and maybe you can't speak broadly, but at least personally, if you erased addiction or if you just pivoted it towards more productive set of behaviors.
I don't think I've erased addiction. I think that it is alive and well in me.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, if I give it an opportunity to breathe a little bit, it'll rear its head, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think what I've done is repurpose my energy towards attacking things in a positive way. I've always been an offensive person. I've
Mm-hmm.
always like attacked life. I attack life today as a father, as a husband, as a business person, as an athlete. I really do like I say that I attack it because that is the mentality that I have. I believe that like if you want something, you have to attack it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I found out that you can't attack when you're dead, and when I found out that I was dying, I said, man, I got to figure out another plan because this
Mm-hmm.
one is not working. And I was introduced to these guys, and they gave me these guys. These guys beat the crap out of me,
Mm-hmm.
literally, and they taught me how to get back up. And I didn't know that like I had it in me to do that. But in the rings of Muay Thai, I learned that I can get the same feeling of winning and owning my sort of life that I thought I had with drugs and alcohol
Mm-hmm.
with accomplishing positive habits, And that is really what it is. It's like that is what Creatures of Habit is.
Yeah.
It's a symbol of owning your life, right? Like you can allow other people and your environment to dictate what happens in your life, or you can own it and you can make decisions on a daily basis that compounded will create greatness. That is what all greatness is, right? It's just like it's repetition of great decisions done over and over and over again. And it can sound monotonous. However, if you do it over and over and over again, it is always going to change. It is going to
Mm-hmm.
get better and better and better. I sat down with my 5-year-old son a couple of weekends ago, and we have a basketball hoop in our driveway. And he said, Dad, I want to play basketball. I was like, great, let's play basketball. I was like, stand under the net. And he was like, what? And I was like, stand under the net. I was like, we're going to shoot from that spot 100 times. He was like,
Mm-hmm.
what? I don't want to shoot from this spot. I was like, no, 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 we're going to do that. And then we can play. But we're going to do this whenever you want to play basketball. We'll do it 100 times. And you'll just get better and better and better and better and better and better and better. I mean, it's just like that
Mm-hmm.
is what it takes. That's what it is, right? Like you just do the same thing over and over again, and you get better and better and better at it.
Yeah, it's having a taste for the monotony as much as you do the exciting results at the finish line. So I think that's a perfect transition into Creatures of Habit, and I think you've kind of already answered what the story is behind it, the origin of Creatures of Habit. But I wonder how is your speaking of attack, how is your approach to this business? As I'm assuming it was one of the first uh, CPG type businesses where it's not a physical presence, it's not an actual restaurant, it's not a service, but it is this product. It is heavily, or at least almost solely, online retail. What was your approach going into this business, and how new was that kind of venture compared to other ones you've had?
I mean, my story is what it is. Habits almost killed me,
Mm-hmm.
and I transitioned into habits that help me every day. And they help me live my best. Everybody says live your best life, be the best version of yourself. For me, what I've learned because of my story was that, like, every single day, you get an opportunity to live your best life. And
Mm-hmm.
typically, it starts with how you start your day. If you open your eyes and close them again, you're sort of giving up,
Mm-hmm.
like right
You've
away.
lost. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's not that you've lost, but
No,
like
I
you're
know.
like
I'm
kind of
just
just
teasing.
like, bah, I'm gonna throw in the towel on this one. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you get an opportunity every single day, and unfortunately, we're not guaranteed tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You're guaranteed right now, right here, right now. So if you really attack the moment, right? You wake up in the morning, you open your eyes, you take a breath in, and you smile, and you understand that today could be the best day of your life. Depends
Mm-hmm.
on what you choose to do with it. And I know that that sounds woo woo, but it's true. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to be able to use my story of structure and consistency. When those guys, the reason why I started with meal one, which is with the protein oatmeal, is because
Mm-hmm.
when I got sober, I didn't know what to eat. I hadn't eaten. They were like, "What do you eat?" And I don't remember what I said, but I'm sure it was something like mozzarella sticks and rigatoni pasta, like,
Yeah.
you know. And they were like, "Okay." So they wrote me this plan. The plan was wake up as early as you can, uh, get out of your bed, immediately drop on the floor and ask God for help. It could just be like, God help me today.
Mm-hmm.
Get up, take a piss, put on your running sneakers, and go for either a walk or a run. It could be a block, it could be 10 miles. We just want you to get out and move your body first thing in the morning. Like, don't give yourself any time to think. Just get up
Mm-hmm.
and get out and move your body. As soon as you get back, have a big bowl of oatmeal. It's easy to make, it's satiating, it's healthy. You can add whatever you want to it, and it doesn't cost you a lot of money. And I was like, okay. And then they said, right after that, you're going to go to a sober community meeting. Great. Go to sober community meeting. Right after that, they said, you're going to come and meet us at this gym, this Muay Thai gym, and we're going to kick your ass. And we're going to show
Mm-hmm.
you how to be uh, responsible and build confidence and have dignity and understand that getting back up is, like, these guys were just like these like crazy mentors for me. And then they said, right after we're done kicking your ass and teaching you how to kickbox, we're gonna you're gonna go have chicken and broccoli for lunch. You're gonna go home. You're gonna take a nap, and then you're gonna go to work at night. And I was like, okay, great. And that's what I did. That's what I did. And they just said rinse and repeat. So I knew that that story was authentic to me. I'd been eating oatmeal. I've been eating oatmeal as my first meal of the day till this very morning since those guys told me that. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I was on that run thinking about what I was going to do, it just popped in my head. I said, my oatmeal, I've been making this oatmeal every single morning. It's the first thing I put into my body, either pre-workout or post-workout, depending if I'm training fasted or not. I'm in the best shape of my life. I've been in great shape for many years. I feel totally fueled in the morning. Um, and if I could figure out a way to make this concoction of gluten-free oats, plant-based protein, chia seeds, flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, and pink Himalayan salt, and then on the side of that every morning I had my omega-3 fatty acids, my probiotics, my digestive enzymes, and my vitamin D3. That was sort of like my morning setup. I said, if I
Mm-hmm.
could figure out a way to get all this into a pouch that people can make overnight or instant, um, I think I've got a business here, and I can also tell my story that you can change at any time, and you never know what the catalyst is going to be. But if you can commit to one great habit
Mm-hmm.
every day, the chances of that growing to two and three and four and five, you know, there's a lot of stigma right now in the world of the social medias where it's like, oh God, these morning routine people and these long
Yeah.
list of habits, and like that's all good and great. You could say whatever you want. I could tell you this. If I hit my shit in the morning, the stuff that I like to do every morning, the habit stacking stuff, I am
Mm-hmm.
a better person. It does.
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
care if it bothers you. I don't care if you think it's stupid. I don't care if it makes you feel stressed out
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it. You don't have to do it. You don't. You can just wake up in the morning, have a glass of water, do some stretching, and that might be just great for you. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it's a lot of things to make me feel at my peak because I want to be peaking. I want to attack the day. I want to live my
Yeah.
best life every single day. I really do.
Well, I
And
think
yeah.
I think people, yeah, social media is full of people that just want to nitpick anybody that has any kind of successful routine that maybe works for them, and it's just it's an easy, lazy take. But I think it comes from a place of people might say, "Well, I'm not a morning person." Now, I'm like you. I'm very rigid in my routine. My morning routine makes my entire day. It's possibly the block of the day I look forward to the most. It sets me up for success. All of that. I really try and center my workout, reading, all these different things around the morning because I'm not distracted by the day's work, all of that. And it really sets the tone for the day. But I think people are missing the concept that it doesn't have to be Mike's 12 list of things he does in the morning or Brock's, exact routine. It's about figuring what works out for you and also at what time of the day works for you. You might not be a morning person. My wife likes to sleep in. I don't give her hell for it because happy wife, happy life, right? But different people have different times of the day that they're going to be more productive or more fixated around. So it might be an evening routine that is foundational for you, but it's just the same principles apply. Is just assessing what are those little things that you can do to not only just be more productive and be these kind of hyper productive, lifeless machines, but have that rigidity, have that structure, because as we've kind of exemplified in this podcast, is just habits, structures. These are the things that we can do unconsciously and subconsciously that just make us better human beings and help us get a lot more done and live more successful and flourishing lives. um, I like specifically that Creatures of Habit, and I've gotten to experience it with our mutual friend Anthony Diaz and other athletes as well, is like you mentioned, everything's all in one. It's the convenience of it, and I think it's meeting people where they're at because we live in this fast-paced life where everything has to be fast and immediate, right, and enjoyable. And what does this product do? Well, it's fast, it's simple, it's on one package, it's convenient, it's first thing in the morning. They can just throw it in there, mix it with water if need be, and it's enjoyable. How do you view competition and overnight oats and these different brands that pop up, particularly not just from an apples to apples ingredient comparison, but also because it sounds like how you position Creatures of Habit is more of a lifestyle and a mission rather than just, hey, we're a superior product alone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. So I'm grateful for overnight oats and any other person in the world of person with a similar product.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, meal one is just the first SKU for Creatures of Habit, right? So it's not going to be just meal one, which is the overnight oats product. It is, we'll have somewhere between 3 and 6 products um, that will be an ally for you in all day parts of your life so that you
Mm-hmm.
can feel like, you have a really healthy but delicious, high protein product that'll get you through to the next meal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not in direct competition with them, although it's amazing to see what they've done because they've really sort of proven the market, right? Like they're killing it. It's inspiring for me, and it's like, hey, this is something that people want. This is something that people really want.
I like that. To pause you, I really like that perspective. I think most people would probably look at competition in a way as literally that as competition, but I like how you look at it as, hey, what is it? The rising tide raises all boats, right? Like they're carving out this market, and now potential customers might look at other viable options, as my business, for example.
Well, I mean, I had early on in my career, I got the chance to sit down with oh God, what's his name? Richard, was it Richard or something Shake? The guy who created Aubon Pen and Panera Bread
Mm-hmm.
Company. and he came down and sat with us at the meatball shop. And at that time, there was so many people opening up meatball restaurants after we had, had super success. There were meatball restaurants opening up all over the world. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And we asked him, I said, or his name is Ron Shake. And I said, Ron, like, what should we do about all this competition? And he looked at me like I had like 9 heads. And he said, competition? He said, the second you waste worrying about what other people are doing is a second you're not focused on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on what you've got in front of you. Don't worry about what anybody else does. You're not going to change anything that they do, and you can only change what you do. And so I the only competition I really focus on is with myself, you know. I
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother, who I've got a tattoo of right here, was like the most inspiring person, most influential person in my life for me. And when I was going through all that stuff with my father, it was really hard, and she was his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I would talk with her about it, and she would say, "Honey, you ain't gonna change him. You're not gonna change him. So what you should do is you should ask God to bless him and change you, change the way you receive him." And so I got a tattoo right here that says, "Bless you, change me." And that's how I think about competition. I I'm literally like, bless all of them and give me the courage and confidence to be the fucking best I can be,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's how I kind of see competition in business, like it's just there's nothing I can do. They
Yeah.
may have more money, they may have better people, but as long as I'm focused, if I focus all of the energy on my business, that is where I'm going to get the best shot of success.
Yeah. Well, you guys just hit, what was it, 2 years yesterday or two? No, 2 days ago, right?
The 27th. Yep.
Yeah. So, what has been, I guess, the central focus lately on scaling the business, getting these next SKUs out, these iterations of the product, as you move towards year 3, 4, 5, and so forth?
Right now, it's about well, we have product market fit, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's about building a bit of a bigger team, focusing on building a bigger team, really enhancing our marketing department with a marketing lead. I've kind of been the head of marketing,
Yeah.
from the
The one man band, as all entrepreneurs do.
beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a great team, but I'm starting to think about, putting some more players onto the team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we've got some cool stuff coming down the pipe. We're introducing our new website. We launched Nightcap a few months ago, very lightly, which is our sleep support SKU, and so we're going to start putting a lot of energy into Nightcap,
Mm-hmm.
coming into the fall, and really just sort of head down, trying to be as efficient as we can, trying to be get as much exposure as we can, showing up at a few more events this year and going into 2024, building out an affiliate team. So really trying to get as many awesome human beings that want to be a part of Creatures of Habit,
Mm-hmm.
building out an affiliate community where you're hopefully going to be a part of it, where we're, have like some really incredible people that
Yeah.
believe in what we're trying to do, which is like better habits, better life. That's it. Like that
Mm-hmm.
is it, right? Like better habits, better life. And spreading the gospel of that is a big deal for us over the next 12 months. Um, so, I'm not bringing on any new SKUs over the next 12 months. We'll have a few things coming towards later on in 2024, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's continuing to do what we're doing, and getting better and better at that. The repetition of that, building out our efficiencies, staying direct to consumer. We have no sort of plans on going into retail or brick and mortar anytime soon, and
Mm-hmm.
just staying the course and continuing to build what we've built. We have an amazing community of people. I mean, we've served millions of people so far, so it's pretty special.
Yeah, I think that's the right plan of action. I think too many businesses, I guess, spread themselves too thin with too many SKUs, different flavors, different products, and they kind of lose what they're good at. So I think that's the wise approach. With being a businessman, being a family man, what are some of the protocols or stops you put in place to ensure that you do have that work-life balance, that you're spending the adequate time with your kids, that they're getting what they need from you, and that your wife is getting the assistance and the love and care that she needs as well?
Time blocking has been a massive asset for me. I time block.
Mm-hmm.
So if I open up my phone, or if you open up my phone, you look at my calendar, it's chunked out in every single day of the week, 7 days, is chunked out. Time that I spend for myself, which tends to be between 5 a.m. and 6:30 in the morning, is my time, my solo time. Everybody else is asleep. So it gives
Mm-hmm.
me an hour and a half to just totally indulge in myself. And then I'm with my family from 6:30 to about 8. I work for a few hours and then I go train. I train for 2 hours a day typically, and then I get back to work. I sit down. I work from 12 to 5:30, and that time is chunked out too. From 12 to 3, it's like uninterrupted, no phone, no nothing outside of this podcast right
Mm-hmm.
now.
We make the
um,
exception.
yeah,
Yeah.
obviously there's if there's an opportunity to do something cool like this, I do it. But
Mm-hmm.
typically between 12 and 3, it's uninterrupted, and then between 3 and 5:30, that's when I'll take meetings, and that's when I'll meet with people, and that's typically when I have my team calls and stuff like that. And then from 6 o'clock on, it's family time.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously on the weekends, I do not work after 5:30 anymore. I don't do it ever. I very rarely. Like if it's absolutely necessary, I will turn the phone back on because I turn my phone off at 6 o'clock when I'm at home. I
Mm-hmm.
will turn the phone back on at 8:30, just to make sure I didn't miss anything crazy. And if it's absolutely necessary for me to get something done, if I got a deadline, I'll work from 8:30 to 9:30. But I'm in bed by 9:30 every night, so I get that adequate sleep, and that has worked out really well for me. So time blocking is like crucial in my life. And then I reserve the weekends for my family. I don't work on the
Mm-hmm.
weekends unless it's absolutely necessary. Um, I spend the time with my family every weekend. If I like, my goal in life is to have the best experiences with my family.
Yeah.
That's what I want to have, is have really amazing experiences with my family and friends, and the work supports that. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
work supports that.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I've started to implement time blocking a lot more personally. Um, my kind of cutoff has been like 6 o'clock, but it's the same exact mindset. And one thing I kind of fall back on too is you'd be surprised because a lot of times you think if I take this day off, if I block out this time, I'm not going to be able to get as much done. But the law, I believe I first heard it in like Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week years ago, was I believe it's called Parkinson's Law, where it's like wherever or however much time you give yourself to complete a task, you'll complete it within that given block. So if you give yourself 4 hours, it'll take you 4 hours. If you give yourself 2 hours, it'll take you 2 hours. Obviously, that doesn't apply to every single thing, but a lot of times, especially with like the freelance video work I do for different clients, I've found if I give myself way too broad of a block of time to get something done, I end up taking way longer than I should. I procrastinate, slower at work, whatever. And I think giving yourself intensive bouts of work, which you kind of space out as well in your day. You're like, okay, I'm going to work, in the morning, then I have a little bit of a break to work out, then come back to it. You're a lot more productive and efficient within those blocks of time. Uh, so I think that's very practical. As a father of two sons, what are some of the principles or lessons do you hope to imprint upon them as they get older?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what I say to them, and what they repeat to me every night. We've been doing this
Mm-hmm.
since they're born. Every night that I put them down, my wife and I go back and forth every other night. We put our kids down, and values are very, very important to me. My father gave me three that really have helped shape my life, that I've now given to both of my sons. So like I would say that, outside of the terrible relationship I had with my dad, there were three things that he instilled in me that really have helped shape the man I am today. But
Mm-hmm.
every night that my kids and I go down, we go upstairs, we brush our teeth, we take a piss, we go into their room, they lie down, I read them two books, and then right after I read them two books, I say, "All right, guys, give me the 13 things." And the 13 things are: always protect your brother. Ladies
Mm-hmm.
always go first. squeeze and eyes, which is when you meet somebody for the first time, you make eye contact and you give a firm handshake. So always protect your brother. Ladies always go first. Squeeze and eyes. Remember people's names. Lift up the toilet seat when you go to the bathroom. Put the toilet seat down when you're done. Look to
Mm-hmm.
the left before crossing the road. Look to the right before crossing to the road. Kindness always wins. Always walk with courage. Be kind to mommy when daddy's away. Tell parents and teachers if you're going to be away from their eyesight. And I love you. And those are the 13 values that I believe will help my children be fantastic. And then right after they say that to me,
Mm-hmm.
um, I say, dudes, you can be anything you want to be when you grow up, and your dad's going to support you as long as you do it for yourself and nobody else. And then I say, what's it going to take? And they say, courage. And I say, what is courage? And they say, being afraid, but doing it anyway, as long as it's for the good. And that is what I hope my children will always remember, because I remember that they have it down to to a science.
Yeah.
And as they get older, I will start to explain a little bit more about always protect your brother. Ladies always go first. Squeeze and eyes. Remember people's names. I mean, they're still a little young for that stuff,
Yeah. But the
but
foundation's there.
they're never gonna forget that. They're gonna have that for their, because I've been doing it since they're born.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sing "Stand by Me," and then
A great rendition
yeah,
before
and then I
bed.
hang out with them for about 10 minutes, and they pass out. And so values, I believe in chivalry. I don't care
Mm-hmm.
what the world thinks of me for that. I believe that respect for women in a in a physical way, opening
Yeah.
the door for women.
I think there's to interject. I think there's like there needs to be a sense of masculinity, of traditional masculinity that is value, that is productive, and what chivalry is one of those examples, to where I don't think we need to what is the phrase, throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? Like there are some maybe old school things that we can that are degenerative behavior that we can get rid of, right? But chivalry, we don't need to get rid of that. I think it is important to teach them to women and children first. Those kind of same principles, I think, have immense value.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love the answers about the fatherhood. I think that was actually much more than I even expected. If and I put you on the spot, but you came prepared. Little did I know. But appreciate you coming on, Mike. Where can people find you and of course, Creatures of Habit?
Yeah, you can find Creatures of Habit at Creatures of Habit with a K, at Creatures of Habit on all social platforms. Creaturesofhabit.com is our website. You can find me anywhere at Michael Chernow. That's where I spend most of my time on Instagram and TikTok. Um,
Your
and
podcast as well, right?
Podcast is the Creatures of Habit podcast. Um, it's a fun podcast where I get to sit down and talk to people about their habits. I got to get you on there, Brock.
Yeah, dude, I'll give you my whole routine. I'll have you hooked on specialty coffee. You have another obsession.
Love it.
Oh yeah,
Awesome,
awesome
dude.
guy. Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys listening. Make sure you check out Mike and all the great stuff that he's involved with. Share the show if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.